everybody, welcome back to my channel. So today is the first video that I'm filming post-pregnancy, and let me tell you, it feels great to not be pregnant anymore. It has been a month since my son is born, and I finally wanted to tell you guys about my birth story, or my son's birth story, I guess. It's been a little while since I've filmed, so please excuse me if this video is a little bit all over the place. Just to start you off, his name is Finley Benjamin. My mom's brother, Benjamin, died actually almost 3 years ago now, I believe. So we wanted to honor him with Finn's middle name. We call him Finn. His name is Finley. Finn or Finny B are kind of our main nicknames. I still call him Nugget like I did when I was pregnant. Finley was actually not one of our top contending names until like 2 weeks before he was born. My sister-in-law, Andrew's sister, mentioned that she had a kid in the daycare that she works named Finley, and I'm like, oh, that's a cute name, and I kind of put it to the side, and then I thought about it more, and I liked it more and more, and we'd already been thinking of Finn as a name, and we kind of just like Finley even better. It's spelled F-I-N-N-L-E-Y. It's actually traditionally an Irish name, but in that case it's spelled like F-I-O-N-N-L-A-G-H or something, but it means fair warrior. We didn't officially 100% decide on the name until he was actually born. Actual birth story I will get into, and also I want to introduce you to him. So obviously you know his name now, but you haven't seen him, and so I'm going to bring him in at the end of the video. He's taking a nap right now, so I don't want to wake him up if I don't need to, because then he'll just want to eat and then I'll have to stop filming. And I'm gonna start at the very beginning. Around 12:45 p.m. I started having what I thought were Braxton Hicks contractions, and I've been having those for the past month and a half or 2 months before I gave birth, so I didn't really think anything of it. They didn't hurt or anything, but I started to notice that they were a little bit more regular and a little bit more frequent than they typically were, and so I found a contraction tracker online, and so I was pressing the button every time I felt a Braxton Hicks, and I realized they're about a minute long and about 5 minutes apart. But again, I was still just like, I don't think it's labor yet, even though I was actually already 3 days past my due date. So I was due September 6th, and this is September 9th that this is happening. So I'm just getting some work done, trying to, get some last minute videos edited so that I could put them up before he was born. Around 3 or so, I told Andrew, my husband, I'm like, hey, I've been having Braxton Hicks and they're pretty regular, so I don't know if they're actually contractions or not. So he called the hospital, and they said that it probably is labor because they're so regular, but because they don't hurt yet, I wasn't supposed to go into the hospital. And so they told me that I needed to either have contractions that were painful for an hour, or my water needed to break before I actually went into the hospital. But they said it was probably gonna be a long night because it definitely sounded like I was in labor, so I should go take a nap and just try to rest up before, I was actually giving birth. So I went and laid down, and 30 seconds after I laid down, I finally had a painful contraction, and mid-contraction my water broke. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to the hospital. We drove to the hospital, and now my contractions are like 3 minutes apart and quite painful. And leading up to this day, I was only about a centimeter dilated for like 2 weeks straight. Each doctor's appointment there was no progress, and he hadn't like moved down or anything, so they had assumed that he was gonna be late probably, and obviously it was the 9th, and so 3 days late. And so we get to the hospital, and I'm already 4.5 centimeters dilated. So they admit me at 4:30 because my water had already broken. If your water breaks, it's pretty much an automatic admission. And also because of that, they didn't want to continuously check me for further dilation, because if your water breaks, then it is a higher possibility of introducing bacteria into the system and risking an infection. They were just going to hook me up to external monitors so that they could, monitor progress without having to monitor dilation. So about an hour after I got there, I got an epidural, and oh my goodness, it was amazing. I had said while I was there that I was probably only at like a 7 pain-wise. I mean, it was one of the worst pains that I've felt, but I had assumed that it was going to get a lot worse, but I never got past that intensity of pain. And so at this point, I'd probably put that pain at like a 9, just compared to what I've experienced in my life. Like the only thing worse than that would be, you know, maybe the initial pain right when you stub your toe and it hurts really, really bad, or when I've twisted my ankle. I've never like completely broken a bone or sprained anything, and so it probably wouldn't have hurt as much as that, but I don't know for sure. So I'm just comparing it to what I've experienced before. But since they lasted like a minute long, each contraction, that was pretty painful. And I think I hear him waking up. Here, can you hear him on the monitor? Yeah. Okay, he's awake. I will come back to this. Okay, the goal here is to feed him and hopefully I can film at the same time. He's eating right now, but I don't want to stop filming because I'm on a roll. And also I have to show him to you anyways. But you shouldn't be able to see anything because the camera cuts off very conveniently. And also hopefully he's not too noisy. Sometimes he can get pretty noisy. So I got the epidural and I highly, highly, highly recommend it to anybody who's giving birth. I went into it with the intention of deciding how I felt at the hospital and deciding then if I wanted an epidural or not. And I definitely wanted it. I didn't want to deal with, you know, painful contractions for who knew how many hours. The actual epidural needle didn't hurt at all because they numbed with a very small needle and just like some pain numbing medication stuff in the place where they're going to put the needle. So it was a, you know, quick poke there, but the actual epidural didn't hurt at all. Actually, what hurt more was they were putting in an IV needle and they tried to do it on the back of my left hand and they couldn't get any blood out. So they tried doing it on like the side of my hand and they couldn't get any blood out. So they had to do it on my right wrist, which is like their least favorite spot to do it because then it limits motion. But they were able to get some blood and draw some blood for some tests. And then they got that blood down to the lab and it had coagulated, and so they had to send the lab up later and draw blood from my elbow. So I got a lot of pokes that day, and I actually had bruising on the left side, not where they ended up having the IV, for like 2 weeks after, and they were like pretty gnarly bruises. Everything was going good, but then they noticed through the external monitoring that every time I had a contraction, the baby's heart rate went way down, like really low. And so they were worried that his umbilical cord was pressed like between his shoulder and like my uterus, and so it was constricting blood flow. Even though I had the epidural and so I was completely numb, like waist down, I had to get onto my hands and knees with help so that he was kind of floating in my stomach so that he wasn't pressed up against anything and he would have more room to kind of move around in hopes that it would, you know, dislodge the umbilical cord. And so I was doing that for a while and it worked, but then the rest of the time I had to lay on my left side because it was still dropping a little bit even after he kind of shifted a little bit. He started moving around a ton and that made it really difficult for them to monitor him externally, and so they had to do so internally, and they had to put a little thing on the top of his head, and he actually had a little scab there for a couple weeks after he was born. But while they were doing that, they decided to check dilation, and keep in mind this was at like 7:30, so I'd only been there for 3 hours and I was at 10 centimeters dilated. So that's really, really quick if you are not very familiar with births. To go from 4.5 to 10 centimeters in like 3 hours is pretty rare, especially for a first time mom like myself. They're like, okay, well, he's still up pretty high, so not quite ready to give birth. We could have you start pushing now, but it's more work for me than it was worth because I would, you know, probably have to push longer since he was still so high up. So they gave me some Pitocin through the IV, which stimulates contractions because my contractions were a little bit irregular, and so they wanted to make them stronger and more frequent. even though I was 10 centimeters dilated, the contractions weren't doing a lot to get him down. So they gave me Pitocin for 2 hours, and at like 9:30 or 10ish, they realized that he still wasn't coming down. So they're like, okay, well, we'll have you push for a little bit, see if that makes any progress, and then we'll call the doctor in a couple of hours when he is, you know, closer to being born. So I start pushing at 10:10, and at like 10:15 they called the doctor to come in because I was doing too well with my pushing and he was coming too quickly. And so they actually had me stop pushing through a few contractions, like, because you're only supposed to push during contractions. They had me stop pushing because they wanted the doctor to get there before he was born. So I pushed again once the doctor got there, and I probably pushed through 2 contractions before he was born. So he was born at 10:36 p.m. on September 9th, 2017. I was only in labor again for less than 10 hours, and I was only at the hospital for 6 hours, and I was only pushing for 26 minutes, and that's even with the break of stopping because the doctor wasn't there yet. Oh, also, side note, his umbilical cord wasn't actually pressed up between his shoulder and my uterus. It was wrapped around his neck. Luckily, not too tightly. It was kind of draped around his neck, and so once he was born, they just kind of untangled him, and there wasn't any complications really involved with that, apart from his heart rate dropping through contractions, but like he wasn't, you know, being strangled by it or anything. He weighed 8 pounds 6 ounces when he was born and 21 inches long, and I knew he was going to be over 8 pounds, but I also expected him to be super chunky. But since he's really long and his arms are super long, he's actually really slender. Pretty skinny. He's still in newborn clothes even a month later, and they're starting to get too short on him, but they're still like hanging off on the sides. And he's not underweight. He's had a couple doctor's appointments since he was born, and he was losing a little bit more weight than they wanted him to at first, because my milk was taking a little bit of a long time to come in. But they are not concerned with his weight anymore. They say he's healthy, he's eating plenty. At his last doctor's appointment, which he was like 3.5 weeks, I think, he was over his birth weight at 8 pounds 12 ounces, and so they were happy with that. And he's now 22.5 inches long, and he's probably even closer to 9 pounds at this point. He's currently a month and 3 days old, and I love him so much. Mommyhood has been great. He, like I said, he wasn't gaining weight at first. He was losing a significant amount of weight, but he's doing good now, and my milk is all in. His only issue now is that he doesn't poop as often as he should be, so he's kind of constipated sometimes. So I'm thinking I'm gonna have to cut out dairy. I'm gonna start with dairy. It could be something else, but I am lactose sensitive, and so is my husband. We both get upset stomachs from too much dairy, and so he might be getting some of that. But mommyhood has been amazing. The first 2 days we were in the hospital, I could have gone home in that evening on the 10th, but we opted to stay another day just because I was in kind of a lot of pain. He was born sunny side up, which means he came out face up, and that can cause more pain for me. It bruised my tailbone, and so my tailbone and back hurt really bad for actually a couple weeks, but especially when I was in the hospital. Oh, and the other thing was because I had to lay on my left side when I had the epidural. Epidurals are gravity like driven, and so if you are on one side, it kind of all goes to that one side. And so while it didn't affect how much pain I was in, my left leg was numb for 9 hours, so I couldn't walk afterwards. I am finally feeling all better. I had to get stitches, which was pretty uncomfortable. Like, the actual getting stitches didn't hurt, but the recovery for them was pretty painful. They give you like numbing spray, which was great, and these things that they call tucks at the hospital, they're witch hazel pads, and those are supposed to, you know, be pain relieving and healing. And They also give you a thing called a peri bottle, which is basically just a squirt bottle that you fill up with water and spray on yourself while you're peeing so that it's less uncomfortable, because it hurts. It stings pretty bad. And so those were all amazing. And you bleed for like a month. If you didn't know that, you do. I mean, it varies from person to person, but like it's close to a month. He is super content now that he's eaten. Hi, was that a little smile? Oh, thanks, bud. What are you looking at? Are there lots of bright lights in here? So I guess I can show them to you now that I've told you the whole story. Here's my little Mr. Finley B. He's all swaddled up. He really likes being in the swaddle. It's really nice and cozy for him. But here's a good look. I've posted some pictures of him on my Instagram, so if you follow me on there or on my Facebook page or my Twitter, you would have seen pictures of him. But I will link all of that information down in the description below in case you want to see more of him. He's in a nice, happy mood. He really likes pacifiers. I had a feeling that he would, because in the first like week and a half of him being born, he wanted to eat and eat and eat. Even once he fell asleep, he got annoyed if I tried to get him to stop eating, even though he wasn't actually getting any more milk. He just wanted to suck because it was comforting for him, and so we started giving him a binky, even though they don't really recommend it until like 3 weeks old. But it's been fine. He hasn't had any issues with eating normally, and I don't have to feed him for 2 hours straight. He just uses a little pacifier instead. So you're on camera. Isn't that cool? Let me show you his little onesie that he's got on right now, because it's so cute. We actually bought this onesie way back before I was even pregnant, when we still lived in Portland. I found it on Etsy, and oh, big stretch, big stretch. And I had to get it because it's so cute. So a couple of things about him. He has rolled over. He actually rolled over at 2.5 weeks. Hi, bud. Here's his onesie. It's a little Zelda onesie. He's Link. You're Link, bud. What's that face you're making? That's a goofy face. Oh, look at this guy. I love him so much. But yeah, he rolled over at 2.5 weeks during tummy time. So he rolled from his stomach to his back. And it wasn't a fluke. He's done it like 5 times now. And normally babies don't do that until about 3 months. So I don't know how he did it. He was just like super determined. He doesn't love tummy time. He doesn't hate it, but he doesn't love it. And he gets kind of mad, and so that makes him determined, and he flips over. So he's really good at it. He can hold up his head a little bit. Not amazingly. He can do it for sometimes like up to 15, 20, 30 seconds, but usually for just a couple seconds at a time. And he's usually pretty well-mannered. He sleeps for up to 6 hours at night, usually from like midnight to 6 is the longest stretch, but typically no more than 4 hours of sleep at a time. He is never really awake for more than a couple hours. Oh, I think he's still hungry. Are you still hungry? You probably also need a diaper change since you just woke up, huh? Okay, I'll change your diaper as soon as this video's done. But I'm not done showing you off. Look how cute this little patootie is. Oh, I love him so much. I just want to hold him all day, so it's really hard to like get chores and stuff done. He doesn't mind being held by other people or set down, which is amazing, because then I can get stuff done. Also, something I've noticed that's really weird is that I forget to eat a lot, which has never been the case for me because I'm always someone who's like always hungry, and so I don't forget to eat. I like food too much, but I forget to eat. I'm holding him or I'm trying to get stuff done, and the whole day goes by and I've had like a cup of coffee and a granola bar, and then I eat dinner. So it's definitely not healthy, but I forget. All right, one last look and I will go. If you guys have any questions, again, about pregnancy, about giving birth, labor and delivery, about recovery, mommyhood, there you go, anything like that, go ahead and leave those in the comments. Hey. Yeah. Almost done, honey. And I will try to answer all of those for you either in another video. I kind of want to do a Q&A video if I get enough questions, or I will just answer them in the comments back to you guys. So that is gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys all enjoyed meeting Mr. Fiddly Bee. That is everything, and until next time, I'll see you all soon. Bye.